Monday Matters. Just want to give you a little heads up. The quality of audio for this upcoming segment is not as good as I would like it to be, but I feel that the conversation's important enough to go ahead and show it instead of scrapping it for this week. So I apologize in advance, but I'm so grateful that you're here, and hopefully you guys will get something from this message.
Hey, it's Monday, and Monday Matters, and so it's good to join you once again for Monday Matters. And today, Pastor JD is not going to be with us because he's got something else going on this week, and so he couldn't be here. So we are joined today by the lovely and talented Justin. And Justin's usually the guy behind the camera, and so Justin's going to actually sit up here and go with us. And we also have Rachel, and she is our groups person. And so really, it's a great series to have her involved in because her task is to help us come together. And so our series is Together. So welcome.
Yeah, she is definitely the glue.
Oh, I've been really excited. You've missed a lot of small groups plugs during Sundays, but that's okay.
Oh, I missed them?
Yeah, I'll make up for it today.
Okay.
How to not get invited back to a podcast? Call somebody out right away.
Yeah, on their own
All right.
podcast. That's all right. We'll be okay. So welcome. Yeah, it's good to see you guys, and thanks for filling in for JD. He's enjoying the beach.
Yeah, probably about 30,000 feet up in the air at this point.
Right. So Sunday, boy, it seems weird to talk about like a sermon that you didn't preach, doesn't it?
It is different to be a consumer instead of someone that provided it. And
Yeah.
so, maybe give a different perspective. So this could be fun.
Yeah, right. Pretty fresh stuff. Well, good. So this past Sunday, we continued in our Together series, and we hit Acts chapter 9, and we looked at Saul, who would later become Paul, and his conversion to Christianity. And so I talked about that. And what did you guys? It's kind of weird now. What did you think? What did you hear?
I'm just kidding. It was okay. It was okay. It'll do. I thought it was great. I've watched it.
Wait. Who do you work for?
For the person doing the podcast. So yes,
that's really good.
No, I enjoyed it. It was a good one. I actually got to enjoy it more than I got to watch it live, which I don't always get to do with being behind the camera. Sometimes I miss things. So I get to go back and watch them. So I've watched this one several times now. The first time I got out of it was, why is Baker Mayfield so bad?
Why is Baker Mayfield so
bad? Why would the Steelers not want him?
Yeah.
So, all kidding aside though, no, going through it, I think it's a sermon that I struggle with, and every time I've watched it, I've kind of gotten something a little different, or I'll hear a different piece.
So you've heard it, you've actually listened
3 times I've listened to it to go through.
I preached it and I didn't even listen to it that many times.
Well, my job has a lot to do with how it's produced, so I have to kind of analyze that stuff. I struggled, and I noticed a lot during COVID and the lockdowns, and when things were very political. We had an election going on. There was the mask, not mask. Everything was super divided.
Right.
I struggled in that time with my own hypocrisy. And I think out of that, it was good because I was able to kind of analyze where I'm closed-minded or not open to opportunities. Because you would hear all these wild statements and you're like, okay, well, why are they coming from there? So you kind of, a little bit of empathy, self-analyzing your hypocrisy. So it kind of, when he's going to heal Saul.
Wait. Who's he?
Yeah, Artemis.
Okay, so Saul is on his way to persecute the Christians in Damascus, and a bright light shines, and it's God, and what's Jesus? And he says, "Why are you persecuting me?" Anyway, so Saul ends up not eating or drinking food. He's there in Damascus, and then God calls to. What can I remember? Oh, Ananias. God calls
Ananias, I said it wrong too.
Yeah,
so Artemis.
Yeah.
Isn't that the traffic
You were
thing?
thinking Baker Mayfield is who you were thinking. So Saul calls to Ananias in a vision to go and pray for him and heal him because he's blind. Saul's still blind. God calls Saul. Did I say Saul calls?
Better call Saul.
It's Monday. Better call Saul. Gosh, that's off the
Who
rails.
brought me? Sorry.
So yeah, you were saying.
So he obviously has a really bad opinion of Saul. Ananias.
Yeah, why?
Because he's persecuted Christians, he's done a lot of bad things. So he's being asked to fix someone who's not a good person. So he has to battle with that. And then fortunately in the end, he is obedient, go and does it, and shapes a lot of New Testament like you mentioned in your teaching. But struggling with that battle of, oh, I know God doesn't know this person. I mean, this is a really bad person. He's killed people. He's put people in jail. He's done all these different things. Like, why is he valuable?
Yeah.
Well, you listen to God. He's telling you to do that. Open up your heart. Don't have that blackened heart. And then you go do that. And there is that mustard seed of good that could change into something else that you don't realize. So.
Saul's like a super cool villain, right?
Super cool villain.
Yeah, so, okay, yeah. So I'm reading Jesus and the Disinherited, right?
Who wrote that?
Howard Thurman,
Oh, okay, yeah.
mentor to Martin Luther King.
Right.
So Jesus, right, is of this people group that's super oppressed. So the Jews are not Roman citizens. They have no value, they have no voice, except for the ones who have like sold out. So like the Pharisees, and they like partnered with the Roman government, but they're like sellouts. Like that is the person you hate, right? So Jesus and Paul are like opposites, right?
Right.
Like they say they're playing for the same team, but there's no way that Jesus's friends didn't just like hate everything Paul represented. And I love that perspective, right?
Well, and of course, Saul, who would become Paul, he was trying to kill them too. I mean, there was that piece.
Yes, and he's trying to kill them in the name of God.
Yeah.
And so they both have the same motivator, but they're acting in opposite ways, right?
Yeah, right.
And so that's what we're doing through COVID too, you know, is if you're red or if you're blue or all the political strife, we have the same motivator, right, which is righteousness. But we're acting in opposite ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Or we think we have the
You
same
know, I
motivator.
mentioned, okay, so I mentioned during the message, so, I mean, he's the bad guy, and then I said, who is the bad guy? He must be talking about the MAGA group because they're pro-gun, all this stuff. No, he's probably talking about the leftists, they're pro-abortion, all this stuff like that. Because we kind of, we see the red and the blue, we rarely see anything in between. We just see the other side. And so probably what you're describing, and I was trying to get at that, although I probably lost half of the listeners because they probably just were, you just went there.
Triggered.
Yeah, but yeah, so Jesus would have been on one side and Paul on the other, although there wasn't red and blue in this case at all. It was whatever.
It was like Roman and not Roman. It was
Right.
like Roman and Jewish, right?
Okay.
So I think what's cool is what helps me like with empathy, not sympathy, but empathy, instead of anger that causes this division between Roman and Jew or red and blue or whatever, is to remember like my perspective and God's story, right? So the phrase I always use is if I would have been there, like if I would have been at Jesus' crucifixion, I would have been the one that was like, yeah, crucify him. And so that, like remembering who I am and the big perspective of the story is always just, it helps me have compassion on everyone else because I am never like, oh, there's a verse, it says like, if I think I am something I am not, right? Like I am very self-deceived. And so just to remember that, yeah, like if I would have been there, I would have been the one crucifying Jesus. And that puts me, I think, where I should be, and it helps me view everyone else with compassion, knowing that like they're wrong, but I am so wrong, you know?
Yeah, so Ananias is called to go and heal Saul, and Saul's on the other team,
Yikes.
But for some reason, God is like, I know who He is, and I know what He's done, but He is my chosen instrument to redeem, the Gentiles and to redeem, to stand before kings and all of these things. And so, yeah, I know He's on the other team, but I will show Him how much He has to suffer for my name. Pretty incredible. That line in there probably was, Ananias probably heard that line. I was like, oh, good, at least he's going to suffer.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you know you would be the one at the cross saying crucify Him? I don't know. I don't know where I would land in that
I guess,
story.
like, have I ever, betrayed Jesus before? Yes, so many times, right? Like, how many times have I wandered off? Like, I know my humanity. I understand my humanity super well. And in that story, there is no one that's, like, begging for his freedom. His friends, like, abandon him. And I am not, those are the people closest to Jesus.
Yeah.
I am not that close to Jesus, right? And so if they were to betray him, all the evidence says that I would too.
You would too? Huh.
Especially if you feel like your life is on the line. I mean, that's something that here I don't ever have to. My faith is, at least at this point in time, I will not be killed for my faith.
Yeah.
But that was very real at that point in time. What would you say if your own life was? I don't know. I would hope that I would say take my life, but I also could be real because if I have 2 kids and a wife, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's super hard to know what you would do. You think of Peter, who, this had nothing to do with the message on Sunday, but Peter, who pulled out a sword to defend Jesus when they came to take Jesus away, to put him on trial. And so he was willing in that moment to fight to the death. And then in the next moment, he wasn't willing. He denied that he didn't do it. So, I think we're pretty fickle sometimes. And as strong as we think we are, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. You might be the one who's like, no! It's hard to know.
Yeah, very true. Very, very, very true.
But in our lives, we all have many times where we were the one.
You're just pointing to evidence, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
When you were going through this teaching, did anything super stand out to you?
Well, yeah, a lot of things stood out to me, but one of the things that stood out is, one of the things, Ananias goes to Saul, and how does he address him? Remember?
Don't kill me.
No, he goes to Saul and he says, Brother Saul. Whoa, that's huge. So God sends this vision to Ananias, and Ananias goes to this killer who has blood on his hands, who's killed other Christ followers, and calls him brother. Wow, that's incredible. Because he welcomes him into, the family. Wow, that's intense.
Committing to what God asked him to do, I guess. He could have gone and been like, all right, just hold on, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm just checking this box, but he wholeheartedly embraced it.
Yeah, and so then I also talked a little bit in the message about how people who aren't Christian, non-Christians, how they see us, as they're looking at us from the outside, as Saul was looking at these Christ followers from the outside, and I talked about that. How did that sound to you as you're hearing that list of, here's what they see when they look at us? Did you catch any of that?
Yeah, it hits. I think especially when it comes to the hypocritical, I think that is one thing that gets thrown at Christians a lot, and it's very deserved.
Oh yeah.
When you look at the news or social media or whatever is going on, you always have a tendency, like, the extremes are the loudest, right? Very rarely do you hear well, this is okay, and it's from this angle, and I like a piece of this, but I like a piece of that. It's like, you're either in one camp or another. You're put into a bucket. We love to put people in easy, consumable categories.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear that, and I feel like I constantly am analyzing myself for my hypocritical as a Christian, and then you hear atheists, or whatever you want to call non-believers, their arguments. I believe we talked about one of them last week. I had to go back and double check, but on the podcast. But you hear these things, and it's, I don't know. To me, it's self-evaluating. If I hear, I hate to even bring up the abortion side of things, but it's very popular right now. So if you go on to social media,
it's popular because it's there's potentially a Supreme
turnaround,
Court. Yeah, may overthrow Roe v. Wade, and that has a lot of people up in arms.
So if you look at social media, it's, you're killing a human, all the way to it's not a human, and then there's
My body, my choice.
yeah, all these kind of choice things. But then it's, so I weigh that, and I have my opinion on that subject. But then it also goes, right now you have the baby formula thing going on. Well, the same people that want one thing may also be restricting how baby formula is getting to families, which also could have an adverse effect on kids. So then I'm seeing all these hypocritical on both sides of things. Money's more important, or is it the politics of the baby food? But we're fighting tooth or nail over what abortion stands. So I guess it just, in seeing all this nonsense going on, all I can do is focus on where am I being hypocritical, where am I closing off to someone. So I think it hits when you see that social media, just the vomiting of information that comes at you. And understand that it usually comes that somebody's trying to play an angle on you. There's something else that they want. They really probably don't even care about the topic that they're discussing.
This is alternative motive.
So I guess that's kind of where I kind of went when you mentioned those things. And those are the things that we hear.
And specifically abortion. I don't really want to go into that today, but I don't think it's abortion isn't a political issue in my mind at all. It's a theological issue, and I don't want to really go into the theology of it, but it is not in my mind. People think of it as this political issue. It's not. It's a theological issue, and so I think the church has every right to speak about any theological issue at all times. So I avoid political issues. Well, I mention political issues, but I don't dive into them. But theological issues, I'm not afraid to go there, but we're not going to go there today. We might go there in the future.
Yeah, and I was not definitely trying to get to that, but more of the, here, and it is, you say abortion isn't theological, which I believe that it is, but it has been weaponized political as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's kind of, you go, but.
That's a good way to say it. It's been weaponized.
Well, I think COVID was weaponized. We have a tendency to, it's for our own political gain, I guess.
Sure.
I'll stop before I go too far.
I'll keep it going though. Yeah. So in conflict management, there's like 4 types of conflict issues: topical, relational, identity, and process issues. So you say that this is a theological issue, but relational and identity issues are like the undercurrent of most issues, and so that falls right in line with theological issues. So abortion is like, at its core, it's a relational, it's an identity issue. And so how do we, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to, there's both sides of the abortion issue, and what we're trying to do is make that a human issue so that we have compassion on one another, so that we're not judging one another. And so just remember that it's an identity issue. And how does Jesus affect people, right? He affects people and calls people through relationship. It's never through information. There's no amount of like, this is why pro-choice is better, this is why pro-life is better. No amount of information changes people, but like relationships change people. So the minute you get to know someone, or like you realize that you have a close friend that had an abortion, or that, like that is what heals things, and that's what makes empathy and sympathy so real.
Yeah, so identity, and one of the things, and veering a little bit off of what you're talking about, staying with the identity idea. So Saul finds Jesus, and his identity is shifted and changed, and suddenly he's brother Saul. He's no longer, this bad guy who's a Pharisee. His name is changed in a few chapters from Saul to Paul, and everything changes for him. Yeah, it's amazing.
Is that, I'm trying to now take this into how does this affect Tuesday, Wednesday? We hear this on Sunday. So his interaction with Saul, he became humanized. You start to find out a little bit more about the person, and you have the compassion. Because typically, I know I keep bringing up social media, but that's where a lot of us live a lot of time. People are harsh. It's real easy to say whatever you want there, because there's no kickback.
Accountability.
But usually, if you sit down on a table with somebody that you have a difference of opinion in, you usually can find some sort of common ground, or at least there's a human nature. It's a way more polite conversation.
Sure.
So I try and encourage myself that if I'm out in circumstances on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whether it be at work or at the gym or wherever it may be, to not typecast and have that conversation and learn that person, and then you can at least start to figure out maybe where they're coming from.
Absolutely. So you mentioned, I mentioned, and then you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I mentioned it yesterday, and it's Monday. You mentioned hypocrisy. You know, that is one of our issues in the church. And the reality is, we struggle with hypocrisy. I struggle. I mean, I don't know any Christian who doesn't struggle with hypocrisy in that when you're not living up to what you profess. You know, I say, here's what I believe, but if I don't live up to that thing that I believe, then I'm being hypocritical. And so, so we struggle with hypocrisy. And then scandal. You know, scandal is a massive. Did you guys see this weekend the Baptist Southern Baptist Convention came out with a statement about the sex abuse scandal that they're going through right now? It's hitting the front pages. It's just awful, you know, awful stuff. Cover-ups and that kind of thing, and they haven't dealt with it well along the way. And so then these outsiders look at us and they expect us, they expect more of us than we expect of ourselves. So, you know, as we go through life, the moment we start pointing fingers at people, which we were doing that earlier in Hollywood, the moment we start pointing fingers at people and saying, you should do this, you should, you know, man, we're way off base. We're way off base in those moments.
Definitely. Which is always what, 3 pointing back at you when you point.
So anyway, I mean, so as people look at us, you know, they see our faults and our failures. And so we have to be able to look at them and see, instead of pointing our finger at them, you know, Saul had blood on his hands, but God was still willing to see the best in him and draw the best out of him. And that's incredible.
Yeah. Oh gosh, what do I want to say? Yeah, we're super judgy, but I think to combat that, we have to look at people with curiosity. Just always give them the benefit of the doubt and make that like a priority. And that is not something that I do. It's not something that's easy for me. It takes a lot of reinforcement. But just like really trust that people are blissfully unaware of, you know, how they came off or just people are blissfully unaware. I'm unaware. I don't try to be mean. I don't try to be hypocritical. So when I am, well, I guess that's not always true.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to excuse our hypocrisy. I mean, that wasn't my intention. Is hey, we're okay. You know, that's not what I was saying. It's just sometimes we do come off very hypocritical.
Well, yeah, I think human nature. I do agree. I try and operate with grace. I'm really focused on grace, and I really try and focus on what fruit am I bearing. And that's kind of the litmus test that I'll go off of. But grace is helpful because I know I have stepped into a pile at one point or time or another. No idea how I got there. I used a word that I shouldn't have used, had no idea what it meant. Whatever it may be, ended up somewhere. And luckily in my circumstance, people have given me grace in those moments, educated me, depending on what it may be, and I didn't find a fist or any kind of weird situation like that. But, you know, I try and, it's hard to operate that way and to listen because I'm a talker. It is difficult, but to listen because then you can find out why or experience they had in their life shaped that opinion.
Sure.
Yeah, once you humanize people, it's really easy to not view them as their political standing or as their shortcomings.
Yeah, so one of the things that I said in the message was that God is whispering to every man, woman, and child all the time. His Spirit is whispering to them all the time.
I love that.
And I talk about that a lot, don't I? And everybody is on a spiritual journey, and they're at some point in that spiritual journey. And so when we look at the other person as just a bad person, we're not seeing what God sees. I mean, God looked at Saul and saw potential, and everybody else saw blood on his hands. Even the disciples were terrified of him because he was a killer. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be afraid of that guy too. And then Barnabas comes along and walks him in to the circle of the apostles. You know, he just, come on, I'll introduce you to the fellas, and the next thing you know, now Saul is now preaching alongside the apostles, which is an amazing thing.
It's inspiring.
Yeah.
Either self-inspiring and then also for other people. But I know that, deep down inside me, there's that God always has a plan and an opportunity for each and every one of us, regardless.
That kind of goes.
Always. Go ahead.
It just goes along with what we say, that this faith is just as often caught as it is taught.
Yeah.
So the relational element is, is it not more important than just trying to tell people how it is?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't preach. I've been doing this a long time. You can't preach people into change. You can't do it. It just doesn't work that way. But you can live with people and watch them change as they buy into this thing that they see in your life and in the community's life, which is a great segue into small groups, right?
Small groups are great.
Yeah, small groups are great. Yeah.
We believe that, relationships within the church are an essential part of spiritual growth. So
Absolutely. Good stuff. Hey, got anything else for us?
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Good. I've had a lot of fun. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll close out this series next Sunday. So don't forget to join in, and we'll find out how we can live this faith together and grow together. It's been a fun series, and then we get ready to take on our next series, which I'll introduce next.
Oh, you're not going to tease it now?
No, we'll tease it next week.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us.